The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
You are listening to Dr. Sam Frost Fridays. Well, welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I'm Rick Welch, and to my left is Rick Big Daddy Carter.
Hey, Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Behind the glass, Rocket Man Andy Bishop. To my right, Sarita the Edge Edgerton.
Hello.
Yeah, we have got Dr. Frost back in the studio. Thank you for being here, Dr. Frost.
Thank you for having me back.
How about that
Again.
jet lag? How's that working out for you, this back and forth crap, huh?
Yeah. And the pizza.
Yeah.
Boy, are my arms tired.
Boy, yeah. We just ate some really awesome pizza. We always do this whenever we have these long recording days. We get pizza from this place
Cracker
right up
Barrel.
the street. Yeah, we've had Cracker Barrel and all kinds of
Pizza.
food, but this pizza, if you guys have never had it, what is it? K's? It's called K's Soulflow Pizza.
SoFlo,
New
yeah.
York
Soulflow,
style.
New York
Southern
style.
Florida. They also
Flow.
do a couple like what's that flatbread Cuban, like a Cuban, things like that.
Soul Glow.
Yeah,
Sort
it
of like
says
that sort of
K's
thing, too.
New York Southern Florida Pizza is what
Right.
it is. But it's fantastic.
Their pizza
Yes.
is very for around here. That's
Yeah.
the New Yorkest thing you're gonna get.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good. But
It's so New York, it's Southern style.
yeah. It's so I didn't realize that SoFlo stood for Southern Florida. I thought it was like something to do with soul, but obviously I don't know.
Oh, you remember Soul Glow?
Remember
Soul
soul?
Oh yeah.
Let your soul glow.
That's why that's from Coming to America, right?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
That was Soul Glow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're this is going to be the final episode of this series for now. We haven't really, resolved
I
anything.
got questions.
What?
Well, you're not going to cover them in this particular one, so
Good
I got
grief,
questions for him.
Sarita. Every time we have a topic, you're like, I want to change the topic. Let's
I'm
talk
not
about it.
changing the topic. No,
No,
we're
go
going
ahead.
time statements because
Ask your
I'm
question.
fascinated by that too.
Ask your question. This is your moment. Let's do it.
This is my moment.
This is your moment. Let's do it.
This is your moment.
So, Dr. Frost,
Yes.
Revelation,
Yeah.
the bowls,
He's
the
had pizza.
seals.
He's out. He's out. He's like,
asleep.
I know it's a problem with
It's
lunch.
nap- it's nap
That's
time.
a problem with lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nap time.
Do you believe that everything in Revelation is symbolic, or do you believe that there are some things in there that are literal?
Well, both. I mean, it's for me, Revelation is between Ascension, which is Revelation 5. That's the ascension of Christ, and then to the end, new heavens and new earth. So that puts us in between that, and so it's seeing everything in between that. So it's what Jesus said in Matthew 24. Great tribulation that has not been, that's the past from the beginning of creation until now, the present, nor shall be, and no more. So it will end. So great tribulation and tribulation. Now, Matthew's the only one that uses great tribulation. Mark has just tribulation. So Matthew puts in there great tribulation. So great tribulation is a phrase that's used in Daniel. It's used in Nehemiah. Now, you might know Nehemiah. We are in great tribulation. It just means great tribulation. If you're in Ukraine right now, you're in great tribulation. That's how the phrase great affliction, great tribulation. It's not a technical term. Dispensationalists kind of made it into this kind of a technical term of this little period that would happen before Jesus returns. There would be this little period that would happen called great tribulation, unlike any other tribulation ever before. But, World War II, that's
What's
pretty
a great
bad.
tribulation?
Minor tribulation.
Yeah, that was a little one. No, that's great tribulation. That's how the Bible would describe birth pangs, great tribulation. These phrases are used a lot in the Tanakh or the Hebrew scriptures. And so Jesus is predicting great tribulation until it is no more. And that's what John sees as great tribulation until things that must be. That's what he's seeing. So these are things that must take place. When they take place, they will be quickly. Another phrasing that's found throughout the Septuagint is entake. So that's a prepositional phrase that's used adverbially to modify a verb. When they happen, they take place quickly. Deliver me, Lord, quickly. Come to me, Lord, speedily. Lord, quickly deliver me from. This is the phrasing that they would use.
So that gets into our time statements. Look at that.
Psalm 2, kiss the Son lest his wrath flare up, entake, quickly. And Psalm 2 is used as a basis for Revelation, perhaps more than any other psalm. That psalm is used, I come quickly. Well, yes, he comes quickly with a sharp sword out of his mouth like a thief. So if you're walking in the day, you know you're not aware if he comes or if he doesn't come. He could come in a heart attack, a stroke, or whatever. Death is in his hands, so he comes quickly. This is God. This is Yahweh.
So you believe in a bodily second coming?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. So,
Yep.
and it's coming.
I don't know. I have no clue.
Do we have a way of?
Nope.
Okay. There's no way of.
And that's another
1985.
Yeah, that's another thing
1988.
88, my bad. Again.
is that Jesus. We keep thinking that Jesus he's giving a bunch of signs to tick off on a calendar, and he's not doing anything of the kind. It's a sign. What is the sign of your presence? So it's not what are the signs that we can tick off a calendar, and then we can know with relative
Gotcha.
calculation when you're going to descend. That, again, is another invention that was come down the pike, relatively new.
Gotcha.
Like the medieval times, you don't find them looking around for the coming of the Lord a whole lot.
Really? That's
Not a lot.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they're more interested in building, universities and creating, I mean, he's going to come, but when he does, he does. You get this kind of an occupy until I come mentality. So, be busy.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Question answered.
Yeah.
And he also addressed some time statements in there. So look, we're done.
Yeah, we're done.
That was it. Great episode, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
I'll be here
I
all
actually
night.
had something you had said in Take, and I had something about that in my notes I was going to talk to you about actually.
Yeah, that's used. That's
because
used
it's
in the
something
classic
that
Greek.
You wrote it on Facebook. You
Yeah.
were talking about in Take on Facebook, and that
The hooves of
you said it-
Zeus's chariots rode quickly. It's describing the hooves. It has nothing to do with
Moving quickly.
time. It's the description. So when God appears, it's quick.
Again, English language. Quick can mean a time statement or an activity frenzy or
If it's adverbial modifying a verb, then it is just when the action happens. It's quick. Yes. It doesn't tell you when the action will happen.
Yeah, but I find it interesting in Matthew 24, or when at least Jesus said, no man knows the hour
Yeah, right.
or time that when these things are going to happen, that now we get Revelations that's written later that now states that Jesus says, I'm coming quickly. There's a change in definition of time.
Well, I think what we see with Peter is he says, receive my spirit. So Peter is there being martyred, persecuted, as Jesus said that they would be persecuted, and he sees heaven, Daniel 7:13.
Oh, you mean Stephen?
Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah.
So he's seeing all of this, and then he says, Lord, receive my spirit. So Jesus comes. This would be a coming. Jesus comes and he receives his spirit. We're seeing it illustrated right there.
Well, he did tell them that I'll come back
I'll
for
come
you.
and, yep, he's coming for them. So as Yahweh comes and rescues David, he comes. So this is this invisible coming, perpetual kind of coming that is spoken of that Jesus uses for his own, takes it up for himself.
and,
uses it.
And to kind of give you a little side note on that, when my grandmother passed away many years ago, she said she saw Jesus in the room with her coming to get her.
Good theology.
How was I to argue with that? I wasn't seeing what she was
Right.
seeing, but you could feel something in the room. I could feel a presence in the room. But she was like, "Isn't he beautiful? Can't you see him?" And I was like, "He's not
Place
coming
I
for
go to
me."
prepare for you, I will come and get you and take you to be with where I am, absent from the body, present with the Lord. That's all that he's saying there in John. It's not resurrection of the dead. He's not referring to any of that yet. That comes in the last day. John made that
That's
very
such an
plain.
interesting take because first of all, I want to say something about Acts chapter 1, the way that he leaves right in the cloud.
Yeah.
The way that the full preterists defend it,
I've always felt was a very weak defense. I never really cared for that defense. I thought
It's weak.
I just think that it is. However, the way that you guys described when people die and they go is it's like in my brain, I think of it as an Acts 1 coming, okay, in that way. In other words, in the same manner. So when a lot of times we think, well, he's going away in a cloud and going up, and that he will return in the same manner. But does that mean that he's returning the opposite direction in the language? Is that what it means? Or does it mean
it does mean that.
Is it directional?
Because Peter in 4 says, whom heaven must receive until restoration of all things. So he gives us this, he gives ascension until restoration of all things, which I think Revelation is ascension until restoration of all things, which puts us somewhere in the story, somewhere in the middle, but maybe in the end. I don't know. It becomes, I think what Matthew's trying to do with all the apocalypticism going on in the first century, is he's cutting the feet underneath it. There is no calculation to it. There isn't any of that. You're going to have tribulation. You're going to have suffering. You're going to have wars, earthquakes, famines. You're going to see all of these things. And you are even going to see Jerusalem fall. But the end is not yet. The end you're asking about, that is not yet. This generation is going to come. This generation is going to go. Heaven and earth will pass away. But that day, no man knows the day or the hour. That's what he's telling them.
No, I don't think so.
Well, it's flat out in the Greek what he's telling them. Because when he says heaven and earth will pass away in Second Temple Judaism, that had only one meeting.
We can't argue with the Greek. I can't argue with you.
You can't argue with the Greek because you don't know it. Yeah.
And then he states right after that statement of that day. Of what day? So that is anaphoric.
Then why wouldn't every scholar immediately say, stop now, stop reading this English, and let's redo it?
Well, I'm just
Well, they
wondering,
do
like,
if you read the commentary. The technical commentaries are all
every
Greek
scholar
commentaries.
today says that
Every one of
Jesus
them.
and Paul they believed in the imminency of what was happening, that it wasn't the language that we're describing. All scholars today.
Not all of them.
No, all scholars that are atheist scholars that are not religious believers, but these are
Some of them.
the scholars today. You'll see them on Myth Vision. You'll see them I see them on Myth Vision, but I also see them in books.
No,
everything.
I don't go to. I'm talking about Cambridge, Sorbonne, Oxford. These guys, Princeton.
Okay, but
I'm
a
not
lot of
talking
those
about
saw
what's
the
on
imminence
YouTube.
as well, including Bart Ehrman, who is a Princeton.
Yeah,
he
endorses that.
Yeah, so he's like, hey, they
Ask
failed.
him what he means by imminence.
I'll try.
What he means by imminence is that Jesus expected the Q source of the Gospels. That are the source of the Gospels that lay behind in New Testament criticism. So you have all of these different types of traditions that
And
were
the
going
Q
on.
source, which has
And
never
none
been
of-
found, right?
Right.
That's
And
it's a idea that there was a source prior to the Gospels called the Q document.
so, and none of these Gospels were written.
QAnon?
No,
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
it's just
Q.
Quell. In German, Quell, which just means source. So they
Source.
just abbreviated it Q. So doing the research there and pinning together the historic Jesus and peeling back all of these layers. What you find, all of the Gospels were written late first century. Matthew is early second century.
Mm-hmm.
So Second Peter did not write Second Peter. That's the consensus of scholars. Second Thessalonians, Paul did not write.
Would you
Thessalonians.
agree with that?
No, I don't.
You don't agree with that?
I think a lot of the Gospels were written post 70 AD. Mark probably is the earliest, somewhere in and around 69, 70, somewhere around there.
So they just gave them the names because it sounded legit?
Yeah, we don't know who wrote them. I don't know who wrote them. I don't know who wrote Matthew. That comes out of the traditions. But either way, it's we take them as eyewitness accounts. That's all we have. So we take them as eyewitness accounts as best as this the evidence. I need something else called the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
Get into the whole esoteric aspect there. If you went just off textual criticism, I'd end up like Bart Ehrman. If empiricism was my only means
I
of
think
gaining
that
knowledge,
would be true for anyone that was actually studying.
sure.
We would all follow.
absolutely.
We would come to that same conclusion, but we don't because of the Holy Spirit. Again, esoteric. We have that. So we look at it from a different perspective.
Oh yeah,
I choose different versions, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like,
Yeah. That's why you have so many translations, is because of the nuances of Greek and bringing it out and this, that, and the other. So when you start reading Greek, and I've been reading Greek 30 some years now, it just colors the language different, and you begin to see some of the things that are going on.
well, do you
there.
feel sorry for some of us that don't know it? I mean, just
Well,
we're trying.
well,
We're trying. Like listen to what I do. I'll grab a concordance.
feel sorry,
And that doesn't do anything for me because I'm grabbing one word out of the context of the Greek, and I have got to put all of these
And you have a
sentences together,
Spanish
which
teacher
means something
here, so-
different.
Right.
Sorry?
Sometimes
Spanish is not English, so you have a you know what I'm.
Yeah.
You're not catching the. If you
What were
went
you
to
going to say, Andy?
Mexico and using phrases you learned out of a book, they know that that's not how we talk.
Colloquialisms.
That's not how we talk, dude.
Yeah.
Right. What were you saying, Andy?
I was just going to say, yeah, the definition of a word often depends on context, no matter the language.
Exactly. And so we'll talk and we'll say, oh, this is what it means, right? And then we'll go and we'll grab a word and be like, of course, it means this. It's the third definition of the word, according to this
Right.
dictionary. And so you take the third definition, you place it in its context. You don't realize that third definition can't actually work within the structure of the sentence. And so therefore,
Right, there's
we've
other-
created a whole new thought that actually
other
didn't
words-
exist.
There's other words in that sentence that you're not taking the correct way that would reshape your interpretation of the word that you picked in the first place.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm going to change the name of the show. It's not going to be the Burrows of Berea anymore. I'm going to figure out how to say it in the Greek.
Called Let's Learn Greek.
The only Greek I know is my
Oikos.
sorority name.
So
Oikos.
when you see a statement when Jesus says heaven and earth will pass away, and you know what the first century audience, that what they were understanding, that heaven and earth language, you see it in the Dead Sea Scrolls,
Which
you
is
see it
what?
all over the
Would you-
heaven and earth. It's heaven and earth.
Yeah, you're looking at like
You're talking about the
heaven
physical.
and earth. Yeah, it's
No.
Genesis 1:1. It's heaven and earth. This was readily understood in the apocalyptic, the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've read all of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the scholars to go along with it that are working on the Dead Sea Scrolls. So they would have heard that. That's what they were asking when they heard this thing about Jerusalem, which is more than just somebody knocking and flicking over a couple of things. Jesus says all of these things will be, thrown down one upon another. All of this is going to take place. Well, you and what army
right.
are going to do that? That's like me going to a football stadium and saying, this is all going to be destroyed by you.
Right.
Do you need a bulldozer or a crane, or how are you? What arm? They associated then end of the age with that. This is the coming of the glory of the Messiah. When are these things going to happen? And Jesus teases out these things and saying, you're going to see this, you're going to see this, 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 and this. You're even going to see Jerusalem surrounded by the armies, but the end is not yet. There, and that creates the tension of that eschatology has created. Everyone thinks they're living in the end. Everyone thinks the end is not yet. You're not going to scratch your head when the end happens. We're not going to be debating whether or not Jesus has brought about the end of the age. And we're going to sit around and debate whether or not he did, or whether if Jesus is going to raise the dead and change the living, we're not going to sit around and, did Jesus just do that?
Right. I like
you're
how
gonna
that-
He
know
picks
it.
up that Southern accent
like
real
how he
quick.
I'm Southern. I lived in the South for a long time, from Florida.
Oh, that's not
We
the
don't
South.
consider that.
But it depends.
South.
Certain
the
parts
South.
of Florida are the South.
Yeah,
Parts-
Gainesville,
Thank
yes,
you.
where they
Thank
wear
you.
jorts.
Jay-
And
For
I
sure.
do promise that if you vote me in as governor, I will invade Disneyland.
Andy,
And that's in
World.
California.
He's
no,
almost-
no, Disneyland's in California. Yeah, he's already got Disney World under control. He's working on that one. So
Oh,
he's going to head to Disneyland.
They're suing him
And
again.
then the
He's gonna
world.
lose again. He's a glutton for. He got married at Disney. Like, this is personal for him.
Oh,
He got married there.
so he hates his wife so much?
No, he's a Disney adult. No, he just he did that one law, that don't say gay law, and Disney was like, no, we'll do whatever we want. That's dumb. And then he tried to hit him with the tax thing, and they were like, actually, we are a town, and you don't tell us what to do as far as like local taxes, whatever. It's a whole.
Well,
it's,
the
it's
biggest point is
personal,
if you
though.
will vote him in as president, he promises to invade Disneyland,
Thank-
and he'll go from
Yay.
Florida all the way to there.
I want to see the march. Marching army. An army dressed as what? Like Warner Brothers characters all the way across the
The
nation.
Animaniacs.
They're perfect.
All the Looney Tunes characters.
That sounds like it's worth my federal tax dollars. I'm in.
it's better than building a wall.
it was a real switch for
Not
me
really.
to see where
They're
Jesus is
both.
where Jesus is pronouncing and says, "This generation will pass away." You're not the terminal generation. That he specifically is saying, "You're not the terminal generation. This generation
Was
will
that in
pass
the Greek
away."
as well? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, the words, this generation will pass away. That's what it says.
This generation.
This generation, the one he's talking to,
Yeah,
His generation.
his generation
will not pass away.
Until all of these
until
things
all
take
of
will.
these things.
Yes.
The Greek is
There we go.
the Greek is expressing this generation will not pass
So every
you're
version
not
of the
li-
Bible is wrong. Every
Let him finish.
version of the Bible is wrong.
Let him finish. I'm interested just to hear.
And that,
Yeah.
It's subjunctive in Greek and it's on the conditional. So this generation will not pass away until all these things take place.
Right.
So what happens when all these things take place? What's going to happen to this generation?
They pass away.
Thank you. So this generation is going to pass away, is what he's telling them. And all the things that they're seeing. Well, what are all these things?
That's not eminently clear to me from that wording.
It's conditional.
So you have a checklist of things.
Yeah, you'll see all
I'm going to
these
ride
things.
a roller coaster. I'm going to
Yeah, that's
park my
subjunctive.
car, and then I'm going to pass away.
But that's not any different than the way I've heard that verse read before.
This generation shall not pass away until all these things take place.
yes.
And
Which
then-
doesn't
and
mean
then-
that death is not gone. Just means that the timeline of the
No,
things
the
he's speaking-
generation will be gone.
No. The
Oh,
thing
it
is talking about the
specifically
timeline.
does.
No,
That's
the timeline of the things
it's
to be
frustrating
done
here because
You're
I
right.
can go to any Greek grammar right now, and so all the Greek grammars are wrong now.
So if I could speak,
So not only are
if
the
I could
creeds
speak
wrong,
Klingon,
not only is the whole
and
church
says
wrong, but the whole Greek grammars, they're all wrong too.
no, I'm not debating.
Is that why you put so much emphasis on the
I mean,
creeds?
it's-
Hold on.
Oh, yeah,
This
definitely.
is a good question here. Is that why you put so much emphasis on the creeds?
Yes.
Because the scholars have done the work.
Yes, they definitely have done the work.
And so whenever
Yeah.
they put that information in there, they're saying, "Hey, go."
These
Look,
are
we're
guys
trying
that
to help
read
you.
Greek. This is their own language.
And so the scholars are telling you through these creeds, "Hey, look, this is how you interpret it because this is what the Greek language." So that's where the creed is like a commentary for you to help you whenever you go read the Bible.
Yeah.
So they had to create the creeds because, well, not only because they were building the church, but also because they were trying to help the believer understand something in the scripture.
They understood the limitations.
And then once you understood that, you could agree upon that.
If you have a wording and phrasing of a condition now, there's 4 types of conditions in Greek. So if you have something, this X will happen until, or this X will not happen until. Well, after the until, then the X goes away. It's based upon the condition. So this generation will see all these things, or this generation shall not pass away until all these things take place. Well, what happens when all these things take place? Well, just take the not out. This generation will pass away. It's that simple. It's just grammar. You just take the not out, based on the condition of eos, which is until. That's
so
how
then
it's worded. there.
Which is why a dispensational. Sorry, go ahead, Rick.
No, I'm sorry. Which generation is it then?
Oh, that he's talking to, his contemporary generation. So he's telling them this generation will see all of these things. Now, that phrase, all these things, that's a very definite phrase. And he's already defined what all these things are in verse 8 of Matthew 24. All these things are the beginnings of birth pains, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are they? Famines, earthquakes, wars, rumors of wars, persecutions, hatreds in my name, gospel going forth, all of the things that he lists there. All these things, that's a demonstrative pronoun. That's referring all these things that I've just listed. All these things. You are going to see famines, earthquakes, wars, persecutions, hatreds in my name, preaching the gospel going into the nation. You're going to see all of these things. You're even going to see Jerusalem destroyed. But the end is not yet. That's emphatic. But the end is not yet.
Let's go to that real
This
quick.
generation will come and go.
Because mostly,
Let's pull it
that's
up.
a reading of that line that's the same as the reading I've heard.
Let's go to it
The
right
end
quick.
is not yet.
Yeah,
It's-
when the end is not yet. That's very poignant. I want to
Right.
Just
The
pull it up.
very.
If
very
he's
last
telling
bit.
them that they're the terminal generation, why would he even add the superfluous? The end is not. It'd be like, duh. I got to wait until I see Jerusalem surrounded by the armies, and then I can know that the end. It's it's like I'm not going to tell you when the end is, but when you see this, and this, know that the end is at hand. But I'm not telling you when it is. I'm just going to give
So,
you within the certain.
Let's
What,
read it. Let's read what he says.
What's the version?
I'm in NASB. So he says, like he gave all of these, the whole list. I mean, it's huge. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Which makes sense that it would be that generation that's alive, because it is.
Oh, certainly.
Okay, so whoever is on the housetop must not go down to get
Yep.
things out of his house, and whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. That's not talking about the rapture.
No.
It's talking about the swiftness of how quick this is going to happen. But woe to those women who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those
Yep.
days. Moreover, pray that when you flee, it will not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be a great tribulation, such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will again. And if those days had not been cut
Now
short.
stop.
Yep.
If those days,
And if those days had not been cut short. Uh-huh.
right?
So are you saying that if those days
No,
is a descriptor?
no flesh would be saved.
Uh-huh.
So
If those-
70 AD, if he wouldn't have cut that short, then no flesh would be. If he had not stopped the Roman armies in 70 AD, no flesh would survive.
Yeah,
Everyone's going to be annihilated.
Yeah,
like that.
no life would have been saved for the sake of the elect. Those days would be cut short.
Right.
Which is all flesh, it looks like,
That's
right?
it is all flesh.
It looks like it says
Yeah,
all flesh
yeah.
here. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or he is over here, do not believe him, for false Christs and false prophets will arise. and
Okay,
will
stop
provide
right there.
Okay.
Where is Jesus?
He is over here, do not believe him.
No, where do we know where he is?
He's at the right hand of the Father.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
don't follow anyone that says he's here on earth.
Right, he's at the
Because
right
he's
hand of
not.
the Father, right.
He's at the right hand of the Father.
For false Christ and false prophets
That's
will
why I
arise.
don't follow anyone that says, oh, he's here on earth with us now today spiritually. No, he's at the right hand of the Father still.
Oh, I don't say he's here now today spiritually.
The full preterists do.
Huh?
The fullness of the dwelling of Jesus is in us bodily now. The fullness of the Godhead is with us now, bodily dwelling in the temple of God that has been restored spiritually, covenantally now from the time of 70
minute, hold
AD
on.
onwards.
Are you telling me that that's a full preterist belief?
Yeah, it's Don Preston. Yeah. That's Mike Sullivan. That's in our book, House Divided, when I wrote the book with him.
Well,
That's what we believe.
Does Christ
That's
not,
Max King.
Christ not reside in a church?
Yeah, see?
I'm asking it. I'm not saying. I'm asking.
And by
I know about the indwelling
Spirit,
Holy,
but
the indwelling
not
Holy
Jesus
Spirit.
of Nazareth bodily. He's at the right hand of the Father. I haven't seen him. I've
But-
never seen Jesus.
But the fullness of the Godhead is living within us, according to full preterists.
Yeah, the fullness of the I will live with you and you will be my God.
I
and you
didn't
will be
hear
my
that
people.
from
That's
full
entirely
preterism.
fullness. That's the entire fullness.
I never heard that
70 AD.
just from them. I believed that since I was young,
That's what?
that Christ is within us.
by the Spirit.
No, Christ in
indwelling
you.
of the Spirit.
Like, there's all kinds of words like
Well, again,
Christ in
here
you,
we
the
are,
hope of
we're-
glory, and
again,
all of
we're
those things.
We're
Yeah.
arguing over words.
We are, but I was just listening to what he said here.
Well, there's distinction, for example, when Paul says, seek those things which are above where he is at the right hand of the Father. So that's obviously making a distinction. Now, Paul, this is the same Paul that says Christ in us, but he's, on the other hand, he's saying where he is.
Yeah.
So there's one person, two natures. There's the bodily human Jesus Christ, and then there's the Christ that's united by Spirit that dwells in us.
Yeah.
So we don't have the fullness yet.
If you remember, whenever right before Nathaniel was called to be one of the disciples, Jesus comes up and says, "In him is no guile." And
Yeah.
he said, "I saw you under the tree," and he was like,
Yeah.
"Wow!" He's amazed by that, and he was like, "You're amazed by that." I tell you that you will see the Son of Man, that angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. He is over here. Do not believe him. Verse 24, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and will provide great signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. Behold, I have told you in advance. So if they say to you, so far he's still talking to his contemporaries in front of him.
Oh, yeah.
Behold, So if they say to you, behold, he is in the wilderness, or do not go out, or behold, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe them. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far from the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Now he continues. He doesn't say in the end is not yet.
No, he already did in 8.
He already did. So, but
Yeah.
immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be
Now
darkened.
now stop right
now
there.
we're getting into the
Immediately
apocalyptic.
after the tribulation of those days.
That's right.
So how long are those days? How long does that last?
The tribulation?
Yeah.
Go back to
You'd have to
Daniel.
go to Daniel to find that, I imagine.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about the abomination of desolation.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
Doesn't it link to
those
Daniel?
days that are there, how long does that last? Well, how long does persecution last?
It's still going on.
Thank you.
No.
More martyrs
How
are,
long
more
do
martyrs are
earthquakes-
Yeah,
being
but-
made
In
today.
other words, did Jesus take away anything? Has he taken away murder? Has he taken away earthquakes?
We're going,
famines?
We're going back to that same.
Has he
where
taken
we were
away
before.
any of these things?
What do you mean?
They're here.
Did he say he was going to take away
If
earthquakes?
these things are descriptions of tribulation, which he already defined as tribulation and birth pains,
Yeah.
what are they? Earthquakes, famines, all the things he described.
The
And
bad
they're
stuff.
still here. Then the tribulations are still here until no more. Well, they're still here
Until they be no more. That part is
until
done.
they be no more.
Yeah.
So if you have the beginnings of birth pains, what will the end of birth be?
The birth.
Every
Birth.
mother can tell you.
The birth.
Do the birth
Yeah.
pains continue or do they end?
After you pass the placenta,
Gone.
Yeah.
That's the imagery going on.
praise the Lord.
Now, I'm still being persecuted,
Yeah.
so it didn't go away. And that's his point from the beginning. Such tribulation from the beginning of creation. You see how far he's reaching back. From the beginning of creation. You mean Noah, the flood?
that was pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. Jerusalem is going to be greater than the flood of Noah.
Yep.
Jerusalem is worse than the
80, 70 was
flood
worse.
of Noah that wiped off all flesh unless eight people.
Okay.
Please, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean,
Please.
it's like if you just go by
Well,
the
yeah, but-
numbers, then I
Hold
feel like
on.
the
There
flood
is
was.
there is one
You
thing to
can't.
be said. No, there is one thing to be said here. I'm not trying to be.
Here's what I'd say: ask a Jew.
I'm not trying to discredit the Jew. I'm not trying to say anything other than there is one thing to me that stands out that Christ constantly and consistently said. They killed the Son of God. Correct?
Some
They-
of them did.
Well, they did. I mean,
Some.
well
Well,
the
it was
apostate
it was
ones.
on there.
I mean, Rome was there too. You know.
Well, of course,
Rome
but
didn't
we
kill him.
understand that it was the Jews.
Oh, Pontius Pilate could have stopped it.
And I'm not being anti-Semitic. I'm talking about
Had he
of
wanted
their
to, he
time. Do
Yeah.
what?
Pilate could have stopped it. He's the procurator. He could do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but because he wanted to
gives
keep
into
the
the
peace,
crowd.
he did what he did.
He gives into the crowd.
Yeah.
But he could have stopped it.
Well, I think my point is that like even Jesus' parables, like the parable of the vineyard and all these things, they say we're going to kill his son, and then they come back
Yeah.
and then he burns it with fire, right?
They got to go through the courts.
Yeah. So his whole his parables leading up to that are telling these people
Oh,
what's
I have
going
no
to happen
doubt.
to them.
Now, you go to Leviticus and you're familiar with blessings and cursings. Part of the cursings of the covenant is the destruction of their city and the exile.
That's Deuteronomy 28
That's-
through
that's
and through.
And Leviticus 26.
Yeah.
So Jesus is a prophet. Sounds like Jeremiah. If you guys don't continue to do what you're continuing to do, I'm going to exile you from your city,
yeah.
which he did. But that's covenantal language. But read the end of Leviticus 26.
Okay.
Though you have served other idols, and though you are scattered among the nations, and though you have incurred all of my wrath, yet I shall not forget thee. I shall remember my covenant made with you
Yeah.
forever
Well,
with Abraham.
But Paul
And
goes
if
back
you
and
call
says
and
it's not
seek
of
me
those.
among you, then I will.
Right,
deliver
but Paul
you.
goes back and says that it's not of those as those promises have been canceled or not remembered. Of course they have been, but
Oh,
not
they
all,
have not been canceled.
not all of Israel is Israel, and
Right.
right. So I mean,
So,
Paul makes that distinction.
What's interesting in Deuteronomy 4 and 5 is that stated that they will be scattered among the lands. And in Deuteronomy 4, it's called, and while you are in the tribulation, scattered among the lands,
Mhm.
this is after 70 AD. That's the war that scatters them, right? The last days, it calls it. In the last days when you are scattered among the nations, if you seek and call me, there you will be found by me. So they have to be scattered. Well, here comes Paul in Romans 9 through 11 and saying their scattering is riches for the nations. Why? Their scattering is part of the plan of the riches that comes to the gospel nations. But we're post AD 70 now. You see what I'm saying? It's post AD 70. Paul's looking beyond. He knows that it's coming. He knows that the Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. He knows all of this. He heard it from Jesus, so he's talking about it. But if he has the scattering that takes place afterward, he asks the question, in light of all of this, has God rejected his people? God forbid. By no means.
Wasn't the scattering before?
No.
Well, that's what Peter
scat-
calls them, the
no, the-
diaspora.
Well, you have the diasporic Jews that were the Babylonians that were the scatterings, but
I mean, there
Paul's
were-
seeing another scattering because they're in the city.
I
They're
mean, there
in
were
the land.
synagogues in every.
He's-
in
You
every
see a
going to be
city.
distinction
scattered.
in the scatterings? You actually see a distinction there?
Rome, read Luke 21, and they shall be held captive by the nations, and the nations shall lead them captive among the nations.
Okay.
They will scatter them among
So
the
you're
nations.
talking about the after effect.
He's using covenant language
they-
there.
and so, but you see that once that's scattering, you see that as the blessing, not as a
Paul sees
completion.
that they're scattering as the blessings.
Well, Josephus talks about it.
Yeah. That is
The
a
le-
blessing to the nations. So that then so you have this scattering going on among the nations, right?
Yeah.
What will their acceptance be for life from the dead? What is their fullness? So when Israel comes into their fullness, that can't be 70. We're post 70. We're at the war is already happening. We're in the scattering time now. So their fullness comes after this scattering, the resurrection and life from the dead. That comes after. That's out here. That can't all happen right there in 70 AD. The world's crazy. It can't happen. Paul's in this pattern, so he's not upset that a majority of Jews haven't came
I'm going to be
Christ.
honest with you.
He's
I'm
not
gonna be
upset
honest
with
with
that
you.
at all.
I'm going to have to go back and look at that because I
Oh, yeah.
don't know what you're talking about.
In Deuteronomy 4 and Leviticus
Okay.
26.
I don't have the Bible memorized,
Yeah.
but I'm hearing you, and I'm trying to put it all together, and unfortunately, I just can't. So I'm going to have to come back and visit, and we
All right.
will. We'll come back and visit that again.
That's good.
I just want to look, see what you're talking
Critical stuff.
about. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I haven't.
These are the further questions that I had as a full, and they weren't getting answered because we everything we did had to stop by 70 AD. You couldn't go beyond 70 AD because then you still got some prophecies out here, and you can't have any of that.
Yeah.
So everything's got to cut short 70 AD. So you're shooting yourself in the foot as far as what we were talking about before. You know, having an ability to think broadly and inclusively, you know, bringing in a lot of different types of views and things of that nature. You should be able to do that as a scholar rather than limiting yourself to you're greatly limited. I mean, there's only so much you can do. That's it. All of this other scholarship that's out here is just that's all wrong. It's all future.
Granted,
scholars.
but you
Can't do that.
also entered into that group believing it too, just like anyone else
Oh.
did. So when you see those texts, not
Definitely.
only the time text, but then you start putting things together like Daniel and First
Definitely.
Corinthians, First Thessalonians 4, and like all of these things start to merge. Gary DeMar, by any stretch, is not an ignorant man. He's a very smart
Oh.
man. He's put a lot. You
think
see
he
where
is.
I'm not saying that he's a full preterist. He's never admitted it. I know what you guys think because of what he said on my show. We snookered him by accident. Nobody
It was
meant
an accident.
Nobody meant to do that to Gary DeMar. It wasn't our intention. But
You just wanted the media coverage. That was all here.
we were just trying to get more listeners, and it worked. So
Yeah,
hey,
you're trying to get more.
I actually wanted to meet him, and I got to. I've developed this love of watching shot put now. I do.
Oh yeah, he was
Shot
big
put?
into shot put.
He
wasn't
was, and
Yeah.
it's a
forgot about that.
fascinating
He
sport,
was.
and I never realized just how fascinating the sport was.
He's a generally sporty guy.
And those
Or
dudes are
interesting.
really, really powerful. But anyway, long
kidding.
Long
I know a
story
female
short,
shot putter.
Do you?
I do. She went to
Man.
college for it.
Wow, cool.
Don't mess with her.
I bet.
I wonder if you.
She'll throw me.
I would call him a put shotter. So if you take, where was I at in my brain? Where were we?
Gary
Scattering
DeMar's
of
not
the nation.
dumb.
DeMar and-
Yeah, all of these men like
I was reading Gary DeMar in 91, 92
So-
and
Yeah.
followed him.
So
into
once everybody went to
full
Pella, where
preterism.
did they go?
Yeah.
Did they scatter amongst the nations? What about the
No,
ones
some
that
of
were
the Christians.
led?
Some of the Christians.
What about
went
the
to
ones that
Pella.
were led captive out?
well,
that
but
were
the
taken
scattered
to the.
are the scattered the believers or the scattered the Jews
Well,
that are unbelieving.
remember
Some of the
that
believers went to
there were
Pella.
there was quite a
According to the
few
history.
that were children and that were women that were let, and some of the older men that could not fight
Yep.
that were captured in Jerusalem that were carried out. Some were taken to gladiator pits and were
Yep.
used in sport and killed off. We don't know.
Alexandria, they were sold off to.
So there is
brought
a
to Rome. They were brought
there's
to
the
Rome.
scattering of the nations he's talking. That's the remnant getting scattered out.
Yep.
You got the Jews from Pella that are starting to scatter out and disperse out later after 70 AD. There's what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
because you have another thing in 73 with Masada, and then you have another Bar Kokhba.
So there's
in
a scattering of the
135.
nation.
So these are 500,000 Jews that are killed in 135. So where are all these Jews? Well, they're still there.
Yep.
They
So there's your answer.
Judaism didn't end in 70 AD. It's like, oh, there's no more Jews.
No, Judaism stayed, but their faith wasn't recognized by the Father anymore. Am I wrong?
No.
You tell me. They're still here. We're still talking about them.
So I never thought of that scattering. I want to go back and look at that a little bit more, and I appreciate that. And I would say for this series, guys, I think we should, since we've solved the problem between Sam Frost and the rest of the world now.
Again.
We solved another problem.
Come to Burrows of Berea and have all problems solved.
Please send all your thank yous to my email.
Would you pass
Correct.
a message on to Jason Bradfield for me
Yes.
when you talk to him?
Yep.
Tell him that
He's
I
going
listen.
to hear this.
I don't think he'll listen to me.
He
Tells
might.
me, he told me to kick rocks. Nah. Anyway, so here's the deal. You hurt my feelings, Bradfield. No, I'm just kidding. In all reality, I listened to his sermon on John chapter 5, and I enjoyed that sermon. I did. I know he's against full preterism as well, but I wanted to say something. Not all of us believe that God is not able to put bodies back together at the molecular level at any time from any point in history. I don't believe that. Okay, I believe that God is perfectly able and can and will, if that is his will to do so. You
Okay.
believe that it is?
Yep.
That is, I don't believe that is necessary for the way that I look at this.
You
but
will.
I do believe, but I do believe
I have
that God created everything from nothing. So I see no issue why he can't, down through the centuries and millennia of people who have lived, to put them all back together the way he wants.
that's not
if
an
that's
obstacle.
what he wants to do, why would I say God can't? There's no way. That's silliness. But anyway, and I will go kick rocks now. I'm going to go outside and kick rocks for a while.
Jason's the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet in your life.
Except when he's not.
No, he's just.
We don't know
he's
each other
Jason.
at all. I did ask him if I could friend him, and
I've
he
known
accepted
him,
my
yeah,
request, and that's nice of him.
2 decades now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So he and I were two
You
peas
don't?
in a pod.
Nope. Have
Oh.
no idea who this guy is.
I just...
Sorry,
I don't
Jason.
the Burrs of Berea walked in. We were like, "Hey, let's study the Bible. That sounds fun and easy." And then it was like a giant crap show. From that point on, it was like as soon as. Oh, and by the way, you need to know another language. Oh, and not just that one, another one, and not just that one. You need
Add
to
one.
understand culture.
Add
Add one.
Yeah.
It's an infinity of learning.
Add one. Yeah.
That was a callback from the
That was
very
a good
second
callback.
episode.
Good callback.
Good job, Mr. Carter.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so
Well, I've enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Well,
for
thank you.
tolerating me.
it's
I'm not
actually-
out now. I mean, we're good.
Yeah.
I've got.
Yeah, you've got Sarita here is on your side. The rest
Yeah.
of us want to beat you in the mouth. No, none of us do. It's
Go
just
kick
a joke.
rocks.
well, I just appreciate that he answers a question when you ask it. I mean,
Yeah.
I maybe I believe that way, maybe I don't. Maybe you believe that way, but at least he answers the way he believes. And you know, being that you were in this movement,
Yep. Lock,
and
stock,
now
and
you're
barrel.
not. Now you're not.
Well, and that's
and
why.
that gives it some credence and some legitimacy. And
Not just
and we're-
in it, but writing, promoting it, writing it, helping
we're
it.
all on
greatly
this
helping
journey.
it.
Like a year ago, I was probably a dispensationalist. I didn't even know that word, but I probably was. I was a left behind. I'm assuming that's what dispensationalism is, but I'm not anymore. And it has caused me to think about what I believe, how I believe about the Bible. Reading the Bible, it's changed. Being here changed the way I read the Bible and trying to figure out what do these words mean in the Greek. Well, I don't understand. We don't translate it correctly.
And translations are great.
So
I don't want to knock.
and here's something to think about. So if Paul, Matthew, Luke didn't write these books, they all spoke Hebrew, did they not, or
Yeah.
Aramaic?
They could, yeah.
So they wouldn't have written in Greek. So whoever wrote
Oh
this,
no, they're bilingual.
so they spoke Greek as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, in Acts it tells, and then there's one speech where Paul says, "And then speaking Hebrew," so he could go back and
Well,
forth.
that was. I mean,
Especially
that was
growing
the
up in
national
Tarsus.
language because Alexander the Great was like 300 years before Christ. I mean, he was.
Yeah, by that time.
By that
were
time,
all-
they ruled the world, and that was
So-
that would be like English of our day. How powerful it goes from all around the world. That's what Greek was. I mean,
many,
Greek was huge.
yeah, the technical commentaries, the ones that are the Greek commentaries, are all noting that, you know, Hebraisms and things that I brought up before. This is a guy that's thinking Hebrew, but he can write Greek and speak Greek.
And now, and
Not
Jesus
the greatest in the world, but
spoke Aramaic, though. Correct.
oh yeah, definitely.
That's how-
And read Hebrew, so he would have read the Hebrew scrolls It's
when he read in the temple,
when
he would have
the
read,
scroll in the synagogue would have been written
Right.
in Hebrew.
in the synagogue, not temple.
But I guess
Sorry.
street talk was Aramaic talk,
Aramaic would have been normal everyday
everyday
hear
conversation.
today.
Not English like The Chosen.
Yeah, not English like the
Definitely not
Chosen. That's
English.
right.
No, that's biblically accurate.
Yeah,
The use
yeah.
of English.
Whether Jesus knew
I
Greek,
do-
we don't know.
I do have one final question that I would like to ask you. No, it's not. It's not. This is not a surprise question. I mean, it's one that I actually asked him already, but
You
I never got
stopped
an
beating
answer.
your wife lately.
Yeah. Is it okay if I beat my wife? No. Is it?
Holly
My
will beat you.
She has a gun. She
yeah,
can
I don't
shoot
know
me.
that you'd win that one.
Not at all. My last question I want to ask is this. During your testimony, we talked about, you had said that there never really was like a conversion. You'd always believed, and then you had moments of rededication throughout the
Yeah.
course of your life. And you've admitted, not only publicly in your books, also on Facebook and everything, that you have had differing views in eschatology. You've come to the place where you are at today. All along that journey, do you believe that you have the indwelling Holy Spirit within you and that he was with you during that journey, that your mind was doing what it was doing, but he was with you?
There's
You know why I'm
different
asking
ways,
the
yeah.
question, don't you?
There's different ways I can
There's a reason
interpret
I'm
it.
asking the question.
Yeah. I mean,
Because-
the Spirit was guiding me along, like, a Mormon is a Mormon today, but 10 years from now, he's not going to be a Mormon. He's going to be
Yeah,
a
because is this
evangelical.
your final eschatology where you are today? How could you
Oh,
say
I-
that? You don't know, do you?
Yeah.
You do know now. This is it. You're going to die with this one.
What has happened is that what was so weakly taught to me growing up in churches concerning resurrection and new heavens and new earth, heaven was just such an emphasis. It's made me go back to the early fathers, and then again, I'm not alone in what I'm saying. I'm drawing off a great wealth of scholars, J. Christian Becker and N.T. Wright. I could go down the list of men that are seeing it. Robert Hutchinson, just on down the line of scholars that, again, a lot of people are not reading. Ben Witherington III. I mean, you could just all these guys. These are great scholars writing these massive works, very well respected internationally. Conservative and liberal alike respect what it is that these guys are putting out. So you pay attention to that kind of stuff, to someone that's labored in the word for 60 years in the original languages, in the fields, in the museums, translating the cuneiform, translating the actual text. That you pay attention to those kinds of guys, that they've given their entire soul to this. And when you get a consensus of them all seeing and saying the same thing, you pay attention to that too. So who am I? Oh, you guys are all wrong. That's a serious thing there. And just because you're reading the Bible in a certain way or something, that has to be tested. That has to be, fought. And that's the way the things kind of work. So was I saved during all this time? Paul says an interesting thing. In Galatians, he said, separated from the womb of my mother to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Was that while he was killing and persecuting the church? Well, yes. He's always been called. He's always, it's destiny. So he's always been that. Even in his times when he was killing and destroying the church, he's still the elect of
Are there
God.
elect within the full preterist movement?
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind. So I don't condemn them from the standpoint you're going to hell. I've never said anything like that ever. I'm only from the standpoint of historic Christendom, as defined by history, is not full preterism. It's.
I would totally agree with
Yeah.
that. We both know that.
I wrote this in the first paragraph in Misplaced Hope in my book, that according to Westminster Confession of Faith, we're heretics. Bottom line, you can't just. But I didn't care about it.
Well,
then.
I
was
used
like,
to get-
but the Bible says.
I used to
so.
get really offended by that word heretic. I don't
Yeah.
anymore. It doesn't have the power it once did because of I understand its definition. Kind of like the word ignorant. Don't you dare call me ignorant. And they're like, no, I just meant that you don't
Ignorant.
know. Yeah, ignorant. Like I ain't ignorant. Anyway,
I have one. Sorry, I know Sarita's like,
No, it's good.
okay. So it seems like you believe that full preterism kind of leads to a bleak looking world to you. Which is kind of the opposite of Rick, but that's not what I'm asking. So did you come to that decision about preterism before you started to change your mind, or did you find evidence that you thought went against full preterism, and then your evolution on, and then your view of it evolved to thinking it was a bleak thing? What's the order of operations?
It was an accident of discovery. How I left, because if you would have told me a year before then, I would have thought you were crazy, because I just published a book with Don Preston and with Mike Sullivan and Dave Green and Dave Preston or Don Preston. We were planning on going out and doing a speaking tour. So I was on top of the world.
You got kicked out of that speaking tour.
I'm with the best guru of the movement who's just published my book. I couldn't have been more happier. I was like, this is it. We're at the top. You know, I'm Don Preston's right-hand man. This is fantastic.
Did you have these creeping ideas about
Yes,
the
they were
bleakness
back.
already? Okay.
Always in the back.
That's what.
Again, that's that
Yeah.
thing where you're always criticizing your own view.
Sure.
So always in the back. And so that will either strengthen or fortify your view, or you'll start seeing, oh no, we've got some cracks in the dam here. We better patch these things up. Oh gosh, they're getting bigger. Oh no, it's starting to break.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, and that's how it was for me. And then now where I'm at years after, just seeing how wrong I was, but also why I was wrong. Why, that's what's got fortified, is why I was wrong. How did I get there? Those are all very important things to me that how did I get there? We'll connect the dots. Just follow Gary tomorrow.
Well, and I think that's the
Connect the
whole
dots.
reason why I was looking towards you and Bradfield and all them at the time was
He's the
because
same way.
the vitriol that I saw at first is what really, I was just like, why are you guys doing this? Please, you're not showing, I don't see the love in that. And I'm looking at it, but
no, I
again,
love Gary tomorrow. I love.
But I
all these
walked
guys.
right into the world. Like I said, we walked into a war that we weren't aware of, and all because we wanted to study the Bible.
Well,
but we're on to something. Let's be real. The Burrs of Brie are on to something. We have really been seeking, and we're not where we once were.
Well, I think
That's
that
good.
you have to, sometimes when we are in the midst of correction or discipline or whatever it is, change, when somebody calls us out on something, or in the case of Dr. Frost, oftentimes he calls out, or somebody will call him out, it seems harsh. When I punish my child and discipline my child, it seems harsh to them until it develops their character.
Mommy hates me.
Yeah, you're the worst mom
You're the
ever.
worst mom ever.
Yeah, that's a great compliment. Yeah, so I think it's easy to read into sometimes what people write. Like you're talking about, we don't always understand the Greek, the nuances of the Greek. We don't oftentimes understand what someone's saying until you meet them face to face. Like hearing someone speak about, he said similar things that he says on Facebook in person, and they don't sound as harsh because I'm hearing what he's saying. I'm not reading into what he's saying. He's saying them. And I know that he's trying to come from a place, we all seek to come from a place of love. And he does, he fully believes that full preterists are wrong. And his way of love is trying to correct them.
I use a prod sometimes,
And their way of love is trying to correct them back. And sometimes it involves name calling, and that's not always loving. But I have to say, our sweet little Addie, who had sent me those questions, all 3 questions were answered over the course of either his testimony or these episodes that we'll be releasing on Frosty Fridays.
Really?
Yeah, so.
We're not calling them Frosty Fridays.
Oh, Dr. Frost Fridays.
We're calling them Dr. Sam Frost Fridays.
Dr. Sam Frost. Fridays with Sam Frost.
Yeah.
I'm flattered.
Dr. Sam Frost. But all of her questions were answered, and I, without me directly answering them.
Let's just
asking
tell
them.
Addie how much we love and appreciate her. Thank you for
She actually asked about treating full predators with love, and you just addressed the final question. So I thought that was pretty poignant.
And I've seen many come. I mean, I get emails a lot. I get over the years. There was just one the other day. Read your book, came out. Saw it. Lights went off. Thank you for your book. So I get a lot of that. We've sold hundreds and hundreds of these books. So I get a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
A lot.
All right.
Is that it? No more questions?
I think we're done.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Those were good.
Yeah, and I thought that was I think it's a good end to it. I think that again, Dr. Frost, thanks for being on
See
the
what
show.
the storm is after this, and if you decide to have me back, have me back, I'd give this a couple of months and see what.
Yeah. See what
because there is going to be a fallout.
Yeah.
You're going to get inundated
by
with full
others.
preterists. Yeah, they're gonna
come
Sam's
after me.
wrong here, wrong. Yeah,
Well, that's they're
20, which is
they're allowed. Maybe
Listen,
we'll learn something interesting
Rick
from
got
your.
called the
It's gonna
bad
happen.
word by somebody one time in an email. It was.
I
yeah.
have been called all kinds of things.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but thank you for being point of contact.
Well, that's okay because we just came out with a new website, and all mail is being forwarded to Andy.
Threatening me if I'm ever bad or
Does he
like
know
really
the
tee him
Lord?
off, I swear he will start
This
forwarding.
is what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Let me tell you what.
that'll be my punishment.
Once we forward all mail to Andy, I just want you to know there will be no response.
yeah, there will be no response.
Anyway, but thanks
It'll
again.
be done with love.
Yeah, and we will bring you back. I'm sure I'll get inundated with whatever, but it doesn't
And you know
matter.
what?
It's just
some of it will be truly interesting if people present it in a way
And
that
I'd like to know,
is
too.
nice and
Yeah.
rational.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? If people are going to have good points, as long as they just aren't a jerk about the way they put them.
And they
Yeah.
are
I'm
welcome to
interested
come
in their
on this
response.
show or come on this podcast and share their beliefs.
I know Mike Sullivan won't debate you, but my goodness gracious, I pay good money for that. Man,
that
I
would be
love
so
that.
good.
I'd love it. Oh, I'd love to.
I would like
love
to
it.
see you and Gary DeMarco.
There was
at it.
something going
I'd like
on
to debate
between
Gary.
like
Any of them.
It was supposedly Don and Mike, and then you and Jeremiah Nortier, wasn't it? At one point,
Yes, and then
What happened? Something fell
something
through.
with. It was on Mike's part. No, we were all set and ready to go.
I thought it was on.
Oh, it
Nortier's.
was me.
on
It wasn't
Nortier's side.
Jeremiah. It was Jeremiah's friend, and then he said something that made Mike mad, and then Mike pulled out and said, well, "I'm not doing this."
I don't know.
But we had it. It was right there. I was like, "Oh man!"
I
was all ready.
I hate not having Mike in the room. I want Mike to be able to speak for himself. I can't answer for Mike. Love you, Mike. So anyway, thanks again for being on the show. We'll bring you back. I will let you know how many people hit my guts, and then we'll see how that goes from there.
Just forward all the emails to him. It's
Yeah. You really want to know?
Correct.
Well, check this out. Yeah. Big Daddy, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. And Sarita, thanks for hanging out so long. I know you got to buzz it and get out.
You know it.
And we will talk to you guys again next time on the Burros of Berea. Peace out.
Later.
Bye, y'all.
Hey guys, this is Rick from the Burros of Berea. Do you know how much blood, sweat, and tears it takes to make a podcast? None. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't cost a lot. And so if you guys don't mind, if anybody would like to give to help us with these episodes, it would be great. We'll put out even more content. And if you go to our Patreon page, just search for the Burros of Berea, you'll get extra notes, extra episodes, and it's pretty much free. $1 gets you a lot. Thanks, guys.
Whoop whoop. Some people got that.
Jokes, yeah?
Jokes?
Am I right?
I will rein
My
this
BM
baby in.
My
You will cut me
BMW
off.
fly down the mountain. We're good.
Don't you worry about it, Rick. You won't get a word in edgewise. I love it. You guys ready?
Bing, bang,
Dr.
bang.
Frost, you ready?
Yes.
He sounds so excited.
Yes.
Whatever.